We're on live with Syd and Malcolm and Diane. Diane,
Hi.
tell us how you're involved in this.
Well, first of all, I'm married to Syd. So the organization started in my kitchen when I was doing other things.
Well, let me say my condolences.
Thank you.
Exactly.
So whenever Rock and Wrap It Up needed an extra pair of hands, well, there I was, because the charity started in the kitchen. Whenever Syd needed company to go someplace, if not me, one of the kids would hop into the car with him, because again, it started in the kitchen. So it really is a homegrown idea that just took off and grew.
Well, let's say the last time I remember speaking to you, you had mentioned that you and your dad were at the Eastern Wall in Israel, and something hit you. You had an epiphany, or the angel came down and talked to you. Tell us about that.
Well, it was the Western Wall.
The Western
And
Wall, okay. Oh, the Eastern Wall is a different religion.
We love all religions, by the way. We are completely universal. My dad and I were in Israel for the first gathering, world gathering of Jewish Holocaust survivors, June of 1981, 40 years ago. And we were there with quite a number of family members. My dad's sister lived in Israel, and she was part of it. One of my father's brothers came as well. Actually, two of his brothers came, and all of us were at an opening ceremony at the Western Wall. I think it was June 6th, 1981. And we were just sitting there looking at each other and talking, and all of a sudden, something passed between us. We had this enlightenment and an epiphany that we didn't speak for about 5 minutes. And then we kind of came out of it. And I said, Dad, did you feel that? He said, completely. I said, I feel like I have to go back to the US and change the world. And he says, I feel the same thing. I'm going to help you. And that was the start of my work.
And when did you start smoking marijuana?
1965.
No, I'm just kidding. It sounds like an amazing type of a story, that a lot of people will say, oh my God, he's making that up, but you're not.
And it was something that I had such a powerful experience out of it. And we spoke about it for the next week that we were still in Israel, visiting family, being part of the other programs that were there. And I came up immediately with an idea that I felt would be very beneficial. And that was, at the time I was working as a scientist for a company called Baxter Travenol. And we had just introduced a brand new product called Synthroid, a thyroid replacement therapy, which replaced desiccated thyroid for people that had thyroid disorders. And we were videotaping a brand new concept in those years, endocrinologists, who then that videotape would be sent to hospitals for grand rounds. And I came with the idea, well, what if we could videotape Holocaust survivors and camp liberators to talk about their experiences during the Holocaust? And my father said, that would be a great idea. I'll be the first one. And it took about 6 months because we really wanted to get it right. And I came back to the 5-town area. I put ads in the local paper if there were any people that were interested. I got dozens of children of survivors that wanted to be part of this, which I called second generation of Long Island. And within months, we found a very well-known psychiatrist named Dr. Judith Kestenberg. And Dr. Kestenberg arranged to teach us interviewing techniques. And the technique that she taught was called reflective interviewing, where you asked very few questions, but used body language, tilts of the head, moving forward to involve people once the initial question was asked, so that it was the survivor that was generating all the information. We were just steering. And my father was the first one that we taped in February of 1982, about 9 months later. He was taped at the home of Michael and Doris Simon, who lived in Lawrence. And Doris was the interviewer. And my father's tape is one of the most viewed tapes at the United States Holocaust Museum Video Archive. My dad could be, you could just go on Facebook or go on Google and just put in Joseph Mandelbaum, U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum videotape, and his tape comes up, and it's a 2-hour tape. And one of the amazing things was that my dad at that time was 58 years old, rather young. I'm 70, so he was 12 years younger than I when he did the taping. And we wound up taping for 13 years, and we taped dozens and dozens of survivors and camp liberators. And I had read in the paper at the time that there was an archive that was being formed at Yale University, the first video archive of Holocaust testimony, headed by a Professor Jeff Hartman, who was a child survivor, had come to the US through London from Europe in 1946. He was born in, I think, 1930, and went on to become a professor at Yale. And the video archive, which opened in 1982, I was invited to the opening because we had this relationship that our work would be saved and for posterity and academic needs at his place. And I was put on one of their main committees of community outreach. It was interesting because the other speaker who was there that I heard was Elie Wiesel. It was 1982.
Yeah.
And Elie was invited there to speak. And the president of Yale was named Bartlett Giamatti, whose son is a famous actor today.
Yeah, he was also head of the baseball association.
Yes, he was the head major league baseball.
He's the one who banned Pete Rose.
Yeah, he died very young. He was 55. He had a heart attack, but got to meet them, and our tapes were stored there. And I made a stipulation, knowing that one day there would have to be a Holocaust museum in the United States. And I had a caveat put on all of our interviews that if there's ever a US Holocaust museum set up, Yale had the responsibility of reproducing our tapes and giving it to the Holocaust Museum in Washington. And lo and behold, in 1988, they laid the cornerstone, which I was invited to, in Washington for the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum.
Yeah, I saw. I saw where it was on TV. I don't know, last year or a year before, either on 60 Minutes or Sunday mornings, and it was about the Holocaust, giving interviews. But what they do is they had the kids come in and they would ask questions of them.
Right.
And again, I don't know how they did it, but they would arrange it to the interviewees would be answering the questions. They say, well, how old were you? And then they automatically would go over to when they were talking about age or what did you eat, and so it was like they were doing a live interview with the people that were being interviewed, and it was amazing. Yeah, they showed samples of that.
We were blessed because I started this so early. The average age of our survivors were in their late 50s. I flew out to Amblin in 1993, and I gave the project to Steve Spielberg, and Steve did the project for another 12 or 13 years using all of our material that we had already had developed. And the difference between our tapings, they use the same questions, but the memories of our survivors was much different. They were much younger. They were not diluted by television or movies. None of them had been made yet in the early 1980s. So we got a much more pristine interview from people that had wanted to speak but had never had the opportunity. And we also did U.S. Military concentration camp liberators, and those tapes are also saved in Yale and the U.S. Holocaust Museum. So that was my first big project, but that project led me to Rock and Wrap It Up.
That's what I wanted to come to.
So this is what wound up happening. In 1985, we videotaped a camp liberator named Francis Purcell. He was part of the group that went into Buchenwald the second day of liberation. And we videotaped him. And Newsday is a local newspaper here. They did a story on him being videotaped. And there was a little picture of him and I'm holding the microphone or being with him. And of all things, my former Air Force commander, Colonel Paris Swoops, saw the interview and was a good friend of Fran Purcell, and called Fran up. He said, I know Syd since he's a baby, when he's 19. I'd like to ask him to serve on the Human Rights Commission of Nassau County. And they did, and I was appointed to the Human Rights Commission in 1985. I served on the commission for 18 years, and that's not a paid job, but we put a lot of hours in. And I still had my entire life being done, wife, children, family. But I felt time to need to be doing human rights work. And in 1988, we had our first Human Rights Awareness Day at Hofstra University. And our keynote speaker was Sandy Chapin. And Sandy Chapin was fabulous. And I had already started doing some work with a local pantry, bringing food to them from a friend of mine that owned a bagel store. And a year after that interview that she spoke as our keynote speaker for the Human Rights Commission, she asked me to serve on the board of her food bank called Long Island Cares. That was, I served from 1988 till 1997. And in 1990, Sandy asked me to go with her to do a fundraiser and to meet with Harry Chapin, her late husband's manager, a gentleman by the name of Ron Delsner. And Ron had managed Harry in the 1970s. Harry had been killed in a car wreck in 1981 on the Long Island Expressway. Sandy and I went to meet with Ron Delsner. Delsner said he would like to help us, but there's always food left over at Jones Beach Theater, and he doesn't know what to do with it. And I looked at him and said, Ron, I have a pantry maybe a half hour from Jones Beach. We would love to get that food instead of it being thrown away. And he said, Syd, let's set that up. And in May of 1991, Diane and I spent that summer picking up 4,000 pounds of food from concerts that were held backstage at Jones Beach Theater.
Was this prepared food, or was it just cans?
Food that was prepared but not sold or served. So it was not taken off of plates. It was Rockstar food, the backup to what was put out for them. And there was 4,000 pounds at the end of the summer.
Wow.
And people over at the food pantry, it was a food pantry / soup kitchen at that time. They ate like rock stars. It was a beautiful thing.
So Delsner really, I never would have met Delsner had I not been on the Human Rights Commission. I never would have been on the Human Rights Commission had I not videotaped Fran Purcell. And I never would have met Fran Purcell had I not had the epiphany of coming back to videotape Holocaust survivors and liberators.
Yeah, well, it seemed your life, has had one omen that you would do this, and then all of a sudden you do that, and it was like stepping stones, like someone was guiding your life. Do you ever feel like that?
Absolutely. And I'm very humbled by it because it's such a straight line, from wanting to stop future holocausts to getting involved in trying to fight hunger and poverty. And it just came from a background that I had as a child of a survivor who starved when they were in concentration camp.
Mhm.
And that straight line really continues to this day because I never lose anybody. I mean, I have people that have been with us 25, 30 years. And, in as we have future episodes, I have asked some of the people that have been with us since 1990, 1995 to come on the air and talk about how they're changing the world. I think it'd be just a really great progression for us.
Mhm.
As I have Diane here with me
Right.
now, who has been my right hand, left hand, middle hand.
Mm.
Actually, my title has morphed into COO. No, I'm sorry, CEO, which is the Chief Everything Else Officer.
Kind of works.
But plus you keep each other happy and amused,
Well, there you go.
which is good.
Well, so we feel honored that we could do this. It's a great way of almost thanking my parents for surviving. I always look at my mom. I saw my mom this weekend. She's 94, and I go over there every couple of weeks to go through her papers and see how she's doing. And I always kind of say to her, Ma, thanks for surviving.
Mm.
Thanks for, having that little extra koyach, that strength to really be who you are. And she defers immediately to her older sister, who really was the reason why my mom survived. There was a selection that took place in their hometown, and like you've seen in the movies, people went to the left, people went to the right, and my mom was selected to go with her mother and two younger brothers, and her sister, my grandfather, and an older brother went in the other line. And my mother's sister read the situation brilliantly and went over and dragged my mother to the other line. She didn't want to go. She wanted to be with her mother.
Yeah.
But that one knowledge, that spark in my aunt's head, she read that it was not a great situation. And because of that, my mother was not a big woman. She was 15. My aunt was 18. That's how my mom was selected to survive, by her sister.
Yeah, intuitively, she knew that she was which line to go to.
Yes, and mom didn't. And it was interesting because her younger brother, who was 13, and then she had another brother who was 12, but her 13-year-old brother was the same size as she was, and he didn't want to go because he wanted to stay with his brother and mother, almost like a father figure. And they were all put to death that day. They were put on a train to Auschwitz. They went directly into a gas chamber, were murdered and cremated
Wow.
June 8, 1942. Same day. They were only 20 miles from Auschwitz, where that town was.
So in essence, where you are today is really your destiny. You don't know what the ultimate destiny is, but this is what you were meant to be.
I think that I think God. I am a spiritual man. I'm not religious, but I am very spiritual, and I do believe that most of what I do has been somehow pre-planned for me, and I just go along with it. I make my own way. I am able to walk the walk and talk the talk.
Sure.
But the reality is that I'm really driven by the need. It's not that I'm doing it. It's just that I see things around me that need to be changed. And I feel the impetus to do that, as does Diane.
Well, basically, your deal with food and feeding the needy, I assume.
Yes.
Like, Diane, like, what do you do? How do you get the food and how do you distribute it?
Well, in the United States, we're very fortunate that our government has seen fit to pass a series of laws called the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan laws. And there's a whole history with that, which I'm not going to go into because it's very long and dry. But the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan laws protects donors from liability as long as certain things happen. So proper food handling has to occur. You need to be able to safely handle the food, get it from point A to point B, and then serve it properly. So filtering that over, my job in essence is to find agencies that fit our criteria so that the donor remains in compliance with the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan laws.
Mhm.
And the way I do that is it starts with a location. I need to know where you're located. I need to know when food is going to be available. I need to know who is the contact person. And I need to be assured that everything at that end is going to be handled correctly. And since we're dealing with food professionals, everybody there has been trained in proper food handling. When I go to find a location, I start with zip codes and I start with Google Maps is a beautiful thing. I start with Google Maps and I see who's located nearby to the donor. And then from there, I take it. I call them. They have to have an agency that is got an ongoing food program. Their program has to be large enough to be able to absorb all of the food that's being donated. They need to have certificates from their local municipalities to be able to open up their doors and actually run as a food service location. Things are a little different when you're dealing with non-perishables only and when you're dealing with perishables. And so we need to make sure all of this is on the up and up. We need to make sure that their people have been trained in proper food handling. And there are a lot of classes out there. There's Chef and Child, there's online classes, people go to school for nutrition, for food handling, and the whole thing. But I need to be sure that they have the proper education.
Now, this is fresh food or, like fresh vegetables or meats or any of it packaged?
Everything. And then there's also the food that's prepared but not sold or served at an event. So for example, I'm wearing the New York Giants shirt right now, and they have a wonderful organization. They've been with us from the very beginning, just about. All the food from concessions, when there is a season, that is prepared but not sold or served, gets packed up, and then we arrange to have our agencies that I've then vetted, looking at all of the criteria I've discussed, and then there's a few others, that they go to pick up the food, they bring it back to their agency, and then it's served to their clients.
Well, just like the Giants, if you go there, do they prepare the food, or are the concessions leased out to different groups? I remember Harry, being the old Brooklyn Dodgers, I remember Harry M. Stevens used to have all the concessions.
The Dodgers, Mets at one time, and Yankees. In fact, some of the Yankee phone numbers still say Harry M. Stevens on them when you call. But the majority of the food is purchased now in 2020-21 from companies like Delaware North, where they get all of their wholesale items. Levy Brothers, Airmark, Centerplate. These are all concession supplying companies, and the food is prepared at the stadium in huge kitchens.
Yeah, I remember my goal is, I was from Brooklyn and I was a Brooklyn Dodger fan, and I was still too young, to actuate what I wanted to do, because I moved, I think, in 1957. But my goal was, like when I was in high school, to get a job at Ebbets Field, selling hot dogs or selling peanuts, and be, work, earn money, and see the and see the Dodgers. Never happened.
Well, you see now, all of those hot dogs are on a grill behind a big counter, and the food handling is in place, the proper food handling. And because the raw product is the cheapest part of their outlay, it's the least expensive, they have to be sure that when you come up to the counter with your $20 bill and you want to buy a couple of hot dogs and some sodas and fries, that they have something on the grill to give you. So they're always going to have an extra dog or an extra sausage or whatever it is. They're always going to have those extra things going, so that when you come to the counter to purchase whatever it is that you want, there will be food prepared for you. So we're talking about all the food that never made it to the other side of the counter. All these things that have been sitting on the grill and then they take it off and keep it on a warming tray.
Yeah.
Those are then packed up and it's cooled down and they're donated for other people to have, so that it's not going into landfill.
But do they have a shelf life? I mean, can they stay? How long can they stay once they're prepared?
So what we tell our agencies is that they have to serve it within 3 days.
Okay.
So the food is already cooked, it's already cooled down, it's going into a refrigerator, but we want that food served within 72 hours.
Frequently, the food is frozen at the stadium or the arena. And then the agency will come and pick up frozen food, which will extend the shelf life a little bit, because you're now dealing with frozen food.
Right, but they have to make sure that it stays frozen, because I think once you unfreeze it, then you have to eat it.
You
You
have
can't
to
refreeze it.
That's correct.
One of the criteria that Diane is great at is to see capacity. If someone is only going to be serving 30 people in their pantry, and another pantry is serving 200 people, depending on the donor. Most of our sport donations are between 200 and 500 pounds after every game. So you need to be able to have the capacity of getting that food served safely to those people as soon as possible.
Now you're doing this on a national basis, or
Yes.
Yeah.
or that takes quite a setup there, quite coordination job.
Well, you know what? I've been blessed to be very good at logistics. I have a couple of master's degrees, and I was very good at statistics. And some of the things that we've done is, and we would be remiss if we didn't thank Jim Spellos, who is our IT guru, Professor Jim Spellos, NYU. He helped us put together software that captures the amount of food that is being donated, and that capture is then shared with the team that donates it to us through our donation forms. We've also added, and I talked a little bit about this last week, something called the Whole Earth Calculator, that now all of our sport teams are very green, and they want to know by them donating the food to us, how much greenhouse gas was diverted by the food not going into a landfill? How many meals did it equal? How much water was saved, gallons of water saved by not having to reproduce that food, but to use food that would not have been used in any other way, but gone to a garbage had we not picked it up. And the Whole Earth Calculator has become one of the premier things that we offer all of our partners, especially in Hollywood. We have 8 studios. All of them want to know how much food has been diverted, and they want to brag and crow about the reduction of what we call reducing both carbon footprint and poverty footprint simultaneously.
Yeah, well, what I would want to know is how many hungry people did it feed? That would be the tantamount.
To date, over 1 billion.
This is 1991.
Since 1991, over 1 billion meals have been served because of the efforts of our organization and our partners and our volunteers.
We
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
went over $1 billion in 2019.
Now, are you a nonprofit company or
501c3.
everyone?
Yep.
When the venues give you the food, that's obviously tax deductible for them.
No, 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 no,
No?
no. I will not answer that question because those are questions that the teams need to discuss with their tax attorneys and their
Okay.
accountants. What I do is I will prepare for them, or Jim will prepare for them, a statement of what they've donated and the value of what they've donated. But as far as your tax deductions on that, there's a very fine line because some of it is considered trash and you can't take off a tax deduction if you're taking it off as trash. And it just becomes a legal conundrum that I'm not equipped to answer. So
Right,
the
right,
answer
I
to your
understand.
question, there is no answer.
But we do make that offering, which is awesome. And with our people in Hollywood, they get a report, as do all of our sport teams, as do all of our donors. When we had our rock bands at the end of a tour, we would prepare a statement for the Rolling Stones, or there could have been a number of festivals that we did food recovery for, and their management would want to know for a couple of reasons. First, to see how effective and efficient the catering companies were that they worked with. This is a great way of seeing what waste they have. We work with anywhere from 5 to 10% waste. Waste means that if you're a caterer, you don't want to have ever not enough food to give to your people. So if you're Bruce Springsteen backstage, or U2, or The Who, or Simon and Garfunkel, and you're feeding 500 people backstage between the people that are doing your lighting, the people that are transporting you, people that are tuning your instruments, friends and family that come to visit, press, you can't ever run out. So they'll always have more food than what we need. And that's what we get.
Do the I know the large markets, let's say the Krogers or the Vons, they have a lot of inventory that goes bad, or they can't sell because it's dated, or the vegetables are you?
Many of the agencies, many of the stores have contracts with Long Island Harvest, Long Island Cares, with the harvest organizations, with Second Harvest, Feeding America. They have contracts that they've all worked in. And yes, many stores are very charitable. We work on a regular basis with our local Costco and our local Trader Joe's. But every store is an individual entity. And what they do is things that are short dated is where the donation will happen. Expired food, no. Expired food is dead. It goes into the garbage. But if it's short dated, that can be donated. Non-perishables, if the packaging is damaged, but the integrity of the food is not touched, that can be donated as well, because something with a broken box is not going to be sold. So that they can.
Guys, I have about 1,000 more questions for you, but our time ran out. But we have the weeks ahead to find out everything.
We'd love to educate. You have a smart audience that follows you, and we would like nothing more than to motivate them to join us.
Yeah, well, as I said,
we always need donations to keep our group going, and we are at rockandwrapitup.org.
And a 501c3 can give you a tax donation.
Okay.
Goods and services are taken, so that becomes a flat out legal donation.
And by the way, everybody could see this show or previous shows. It's called Syd and Malcolm. I'm Am I Sid or am I Malcolm? No, I'm Malcolm. That's Sid. And we will, this is malcolmpresents.com, and we have all the back shows on the air also. Or I don't know, is it on the air if we're doing Zoom casting? Or
It
it's on
would
the
be
internet?
considered- it would be in the fiber optic, would be
Yeah.
more direct.
Anyway, thank you very much. It was nice meeting you, Diane. Hopefully you'll join us for more shows. You
Thank
guys have
you.
Thank you.
a good weekend. Keep safe. Hopefully you'll get the vaccine soon.
Took
Already
the
got it.
second.
Oh, you
All
got it?
done.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'll see you next week, guys.
Via
Bye.
con Dios.